This is Life Transformation Radio. Prepare to engage. Seatbelt activated. Download initiated. Your quantum journey of transformation begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. Hi, I'm Rob Actis, best-selling author of The Law of Action, voice actor, business mindset coach, the podcast whisperer, and Mr. Action himself. Life Transformation Radio is heard in over 90 countries around the world. Thank you for joining us. Whether it's your first time joining us or you've been listening to Life Transformation Radio for some time, I want to personally thank you. Here at Life Transformation Radio, we are committed to share more about real life, love, the power of positivity, romance, and of course, laughter. We care about helping others find their internal drive and purpose. We celebrate life's challenges and overcoming them. On the show, my guests are amazing people who are forces for good in the world around them and live a life of transformation. My guest today does just that. Today, Bob Minhas and I discuss being absolute in your everyday decisions. Bob shares how he went from being homeless to six-figure income. If you want to learn how you can find your momentum and find your passion and freedom in your life by being absolute, this is the show for you. Bob Minhas is the authority in high-performing corporate and entrepreneurial leaders with his intense expert activation system. He has coached over 500 business owners through workshops and private sessions. His soon-to-be-released book, Addict to Expert, maps the journey of his early dysfunction with business and people and his recovery to authenticity. Bob, welcome to Life Transformation Radio.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So that's a big deal, man. Homeless to six figures. So first of all, what was going on with you before you got homeless? I'm sure you had a lot of stuff going on. Was it a big crash? Was it a little crash? Was it homeless when you were young, old? What happened?
I think it was a crash that was a long time coming. So, I had done everything we were supposed to do. I got married, had children, had a great job. And eventually I had lost my job, not because of any other reason that I was a bad employee. And that led me to starting my own first entrepreneurial venture, my first business. And over those next 4 or 5 years, it just led to a lot of dysfunction, for lack of a better word, not only in my marriage, but in my life. Because, Rob, when you jump into business, there are a lot of things that textbooks can't prepare you for. So
absolutely.
For me, it felt like a big crash. I think for the average person, maybe not, but it was a pretty big bump for me for sure.
So what happened? So you were in business, you had a business. What happened?
Yeah. So we were running our business. My ex-wife and I, it was doing actually really well. The business was doing well. And it started to scale. It started to get busier, and I just couldn't manage or handle it. My ex-wife at the time was a stay-at-home mom, and she worked in the business, and we had a lot of mouths to feed. It was a lot of pressure. I equate it, Rob, to a mental health breakdown, for lack of a better word.
Wow.
We hear other people call it a midlife crisis or whatever it might be, but I went through a lot of struggle and hard time. And I tried to do it on my own. So if you ask me what happened, I'm going to tell you I had a mental health breakdown and I tried to do it on my own. I tried to fix it on my own. And of course, it didn't work out. We went to counseling, but it didn't work out. So our marriage broke up. I happily ensured that my children had the house. I wasn't going to be one of those folks that fought over a house and had my kids going back and forth. But of course, Rob, even the economy back then, you couldn't really get another house, right? You've got this one here.
Right.
So, and I'm going to be honest with you, Rob, there was a bit of arrogance there, on my first business, the one I had when I was married. We were on Home and Garden television. We worked with Canadian celebrities. We were doing amazing. So my logic was, I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own.
Wow.
And after about, I'd say about 13 months, Rob, I realized, after a Canadian winter that it wasn't something I could do on my own. And I had certain people that would allow me to crash on their couch. It wasn't destitute. I'd lived in a storage unit for about 3 weeks. Like I just found ways to survive. But you see, Rob, what I realized over time is when I was in that mode to survival, it didn't give me a mode to work on myself, to learn from these challenges and to come back from them. I just kept, when you're in survival, it's a continuous hamster wheel. So,
right. Okay. So let me just understand. So you had a business, it was successful, it was growing, it was scaling. And so would it be safe to assume that you were focusing all your attention on your business and you kind of ignored your family and your wife?
That's fair. But you know what, Rob, I'd go one step further and say I was focused on me, right?
Okay.
I had this business with all these famous people and it was doing so well that I was so focused on my own arrogance, if you will. So yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time with my family. I was spending 12, 13 hours out of the house. When I did, it wasn't quality time, right? I was exhausted or I wasn't focused. I wasn't, I didn't understand the dynamics of a healthy relationship, right? Yeah. The trauma we carry is trauma we have from childhood. So I was reliving, childhood relationships which were healthy and, wasn't communicating effectively. You could say in a divorce that there are always two people responsible, but I take responsibility for poor communication and not willing to do that. Ultimately, Rob, what I know now is I didn't have the mental health coping strategies that would help me move through the struggles we had. For sure.
So you ended your marriage and you became homeless. So what was that like? Like, what does that look like? As I'm a fly in the wall. So the marriage is over. Yeah. You're moving out. You're not taking the house. What does that look like? Yeah. So you have nothing what does it mean to be homeless? A lot of people have different definitions of homeless. What was homeless for you?
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up. I will fully admit it wasn't me on a street corner panhandling. It really was just not having a regular place for me to stay, right? So you're relying on friends, you're living in your car, you're living in storage units, you're just trying to you're just trying to survive. So what does it look like? It's a lot of angry days. Here you are trying to hustle and get more work. I was trying to run a business when I wasn't healthy. All the money we earned really had to pay for the house and the kids. There wasn't an extra dime, Rob, for me to live a second life. So as much as we were scaling, I was going through a lot in my head. And I would challenge and say to scale a business successfully, you need some level of mental health competency, right? You can't be in a place where you're depressed, you're angry, or you're dealing with all these emotions that you've never really dealt with or faced before. Usually you cope with it through addiction, right? Whether it's drinking or smoking or food or whatever that might be. And so that's what it looked like. Every day I got up, I hustled for jobs. I ended the day just as angry. And I just rinsed, repeated. It was not a healthy thing. It really wasn't a healthy situation for me at all.
So who are you mad at? Were you mad at yourself or were you mad at everybody else?
Everybody else, Rob. You see, I was arrogant, so it couldn't have been my fault. It must have been other people that let me down or that didn't say what they would do. And when you live without a home, I'm not even going to say homeless anymore, but when you live without a home, a regular place to sleep, it beats you down.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah.
I have to tell you that, right? I have to tell you that beating was the best beating ever because that's the only way I found my humility, right? It was the only way I realized that, I'm angry at all these people and I'm meeting new people and angry at those people. After a while, you realize, you come to the conclusion that this isn't working. And maybe it's not them, maybe it's me.
Right.
Maybe it's actually me.
Well, you're lucky. So being as arrogant as you were and as angry as you were that you had a place to stay, how did you enroll people to stay on your couch if you were that way? Were you faking it? Were you like being nice to them? Or it's hard to, it sounds to me, I'm just feeling like you were just not a real pleasant person to be around.
I was not. You are correct. But, we have this thing in ADHD we call masking. I don't know if you've ever heard this term masking, which is essentially you reflect that person's behaviors to almost look like normalcy, right? So you're right. That's what it was. It was trying to be on your best behavior. It was trying to, you were almost selling yourself. I had found another relationship and that person had really been supportive. She was amazingly supportive and gave me a place to stay. But of course, when you have challenges or fights or barriers you don't want to cross because of that arrogance, you lose that, right? So
is that what it was?
Yeah,
so were you masking, and then all of a sudden they would discover, they would see you behind the mask? They're like, Bob, get the hell out of my house.
Absolutely.
How long did this go on for?
Mask for so long.
How long did this go on for?
About, I'm going to say, a little over a year. I'm going to say about 13, 14 months.
That's a long time, man.
It doesn't sound like it, but it really is.
Well, I find it interesting because I just had a guest on the show, and she was homeless, and she was living in her car, and she wasn't angry. She was like so positive, and she was out getting patents and stuff. And it's interesting the different mindset that people have when they've lost everything. And she literally lost everything. She had no place to stay. They were in their car. It was a husband and a wife and 3 kids. Like, wow.
Yeah. You're right. I was lucky to a degree in that I wasn't that destitute. I never, you know what I mean? I never.
Right.
But what keeps you in that space, or what kept me in that space, was my own lack of willingness to look inside, right? And so that anger and that blame and that pointing fingers and that arrogance, that's just really a facade. And so when you're masking, you can only mask for so long when that's your sort of. And
people aren't stupid. They're a lot smarter than people think they are. They're not. They're like, I can only imagine, but they would feel that anger. I mean, it sounds like it was there. So.
Yeah. And it came out in either direct anger, or maybe it was passive aggressiveness, or maybe it was just.
It was passive aggressiveness. I could tell. I got
no,
your
Rob,
number.
I'm cured. I swear, I'm cured.
Yeah, I got you. I got your number. No, I got your number.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
So what happened? So you said 18 months, but were you slowly getting better, or did all of a sudden you go, man, I'm a real ass? Like I'm just a prick. I'm just not a good guy, and I'm not who I want to be. Like, what was it? Were you thinking about your kids? Like, I need to be better for my kids. You want to move on? You wanted to look good for your your new partner. What was it? What got you to turn the corner?
It was an absolute break, is what it was. Is you're doing this for about 13, 14, 15 months. Of course, you're going to get sick, right? You're in a cold Canadian winter, and you're not eating right, and you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah, see, I don't know about cold. I don't know about cold Canadian winters. I'm like, I live in Arizona, so it's 110 degrees today, and I'm just like, I don't even know what that's. Yeah, now that being cold would be just devastating to me. I mean, like, look, I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt. It's cold in here. I'm cold. I'm cold all the time. Yeah. So no, the cold would just kill me. I mean, I can see how you would get sick. I would be, if it gets to 70, I'm done.
Talk about another lucky thing. So I got sick, but in Canada we have, government healthcare. So it wasn't again, I wasn't destitute, but nonetheless I ended up in the hospital, and I realized, so this is the click, Rob. This was the real realization came from the doctor telling me, the only way you're going to get better is to buy these meds, and we need someone to pick you up. We can't just let you walk out. So 2 things happened there, Rob. Number 1, I didn't really have anybody to call. And number 2, Canadian meds aren't covered by our government system. And so I realized I didn't even have, it's subsidized, but I didn't even have the $50 to pay for medicine to get better. Right. And so in that moment, I realized it was just a click. Maybe it was a depressive episode, but in that moment, I realized, if I died here in this hospital, how would my children remember me? Like, what would be my legacy to them? And I don't know how to explain it other than it was almost like an act of God. I'm not a religious guy, but it was almost like this click, like, okay, you've had enough. This is where you are, and you need to do something about it. And so that's where it was almost like a 180, where complete humility kicked in and said, I need to take off this mask and make it real. I think that the universe, spirit, you said you're not really into God as much, but spirit, universe. I believe in the universe.
Yeah, no, I got it. So spirit, universe, hey, Bob, we're giving you a little bit of a clue here. Hey, here's a reminder. You need to you need to change your ways. Hey, here's another one. So when you were home, when you were, not having a home, was it going downhill, or was it up and down, or were you getting better? And all of a sudden, then the hospital and the realization of like, wow, that moment of clarity.
It was completely downhill. I couldn't, you could say ups and downs, but in the scheme of it, it just got worse day by day by day. And when I say got worse, it wasn't just health, right? It was just the things that were happening, the situations I were in. I was hurting a lot of people because I was hurt, right? So I was hurting a lot more and more people.
Yeah.
So it was just multiplying. And that day, it literally was a click. So I had to humble myself and say, I need to get a job. I need to figure something out. And so I just put it out to the universe. We talk about the universe. I put it out to the universe saying, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to do, if I have to, clean the floor at a Subway sandwich shop, I need to do something. Right.
Right.
And, I went through that process for a couple of months, and lo and behold, I don't know how to explain this, Rob, other than a gift from the universe. Lo and behold, a government agency in the town I was squatting in, for lack of a better word, was looking for someone to teach small town business owners about entrepreneurship, right? How to start a business, how to grow a business. And I said, well, I can do that. I'll just teach them everything I did wrong and teach them not to do that. Right. I'd never been a coach. I'd been a salesperson, marketing, never been a coach. So I said, what the hell, right? So I went to Value Village. I remember this, and bought a suit from Value Village, and got into the interview, went into the interview. It was a 3-interview process, but did all 3. And Rob, I don't know how to explain it other than, again, an active intervention. I got the job.
That's awesome.
I got a government job, right, to teach people how to be entrepreneurs in small towns. Like, how perfect is that, right? My mom was happy because she's like, wow, you're working for the government. Yeah. I was happy because I was making good money. And so I'll tell you what happened. They offered me the job on a Thursday, and they said, can you come Monday? Can you start Monday? And I said, yeah, why not? Right. So I started Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that following Thursday, Rob, was our first paycheck. I took that first paycheck. I went and I found a room for rent. We have where this was, it was a college town, so there were a lot of houses that were renting out to students. I found a room to rent, and I got a place right away. That first paycheck, I rented a room.
Wow.
And lived with a bunch of college guys for a while.
Now, I don't know if that was a good idea or not. I can only imagine. That's a whole nother story, but yeah. They're motivated, but in different ways. That's great. So, all right. So what was that like to you were talking about, your family and stuff. So have you rekindled with your kids?
Yeah. Certainly since the breakup, the end of the marriage, I never let go of my kids. I couldn't have dedicated time with them. I would visit, I would call, I would do whatever I can to be in their lives. And my ex was never restrictive of that, right? She was very open about that.
Well, that's good.
But you can imagine it's hard to host children when your only asset is a vehicle, right? So
right.
I did the best I could to maintain a relationship with them, and I hit it. I mean, to this day, I don't think they know. So they were really receptive, right? Like, they always wanted time together.
Daddy's back. That's great. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
For sure.
Okay, so you've done that. So you're working for the government, and then what happens? Was there another transformation?
Yeah. So, you start this job with the promise, you make the promise that I'm going to be a humble person. I'm going to make sure that I'm grateful every day for what I have. And so you get into this role that you have no experience in, or no idea where to start or what to do. And so, a lot of what I teach in my business is about personal branding. That was my second transformation. The first one was this, of a personal brand of a business owner or a father, now becoming a jerk, if you will.
Right.
So now came this second coming, if you will, and this transformation was, how can I be that guy that sits between government and small business owners? Because you can imagine, no matter which country you're in, that's always a tumultuous relationship. So how can I be that guy? Because when I looked at it, there really wasn't people who did that said, I know all about the government and I know all about small business. How can we maintain these relationships and help them flow? So that transformation came from the fact that I was going into these small towns, and people were like, yeah, I want to start a business. And I was calculating 6-figure, 7-figure businesses, $1 million earners. And honestly, Rob, 9 times out of 10, they'd say, I don't want that. I want a business that I'm proud of,
right,
that feeds my family, and eventually allows my kids to go to a good school. Like, it was a complete shock to me that people didn't want huge, $1 million businesses. And they said, no, we We just want something we're proud of and that we love.
Yeah, most people that I know that are small business owners, they really don't want multi-million-dollar businesses. They want to be able. Yeah. It's
So that was a good number of months understanding that there's more to life than the big house and the yacht and the car and the money. That was a huge transformation for me because it changed my goals. It changed my vision. My goals were, I'm going to get a big house and I'm going to make people jealous and get fancy cars. Completely shifted what I value, what my core values were. Just being around these people.
Yeah.
So that was huge for me. That was huge.
Yeah. Small business is really the heart of all these countries. I mean, you think of all the different countries around the world, and there's a TV show. It's in Canada. I was watching. It's called Kim's Convenience. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, but I love that show, and I love Appa. And it's great. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But what I love about it is that they're all about family. They've made choices to have their little convenience store. It's in the family. They don't make a lot of money, but he loves just serving the community and being a convenience. And he's just a great frickin' guy. And there's tens of thousands of hundreds, if not millions of those businesses around the world. I mean, think of those small little businesses in India or in Bali or in Costa Rica. They don't need a yacht. They want their family. They want to provide for their family. And I love being a business owner. I've been one for a long, long time. And I'm motivated by making the difference in people's lives, and then I get rewarded. But I'm not a big monetary guy. Like, just not. What's important to me is people and relationships. Yeah. That's what's important.
This is what I came to the realization of, but it took that time, it took that exposure, and it took that environment to really appreciate that. Because again, Rob, I had a business where we were doing, we had Julie Black as a client, Trish Stratus. We had some really, really great, and we, not only did we do HGTV, we worked with the host. A lot of the hosts of those shows had their own businesses as well.
Now, what exactly were you doing? Because we never really talked about that. Just curious, what was that you were doing back then? What exactly were you doing?
A lot of these shows would hire me. Yeah. So my business was I would install tech into homes and businesses. So audio, video, IT, phone, all that sort of stuff. So these shows, a lot of these shows were looking for people to put in that tech into these homes that they were either redesigning or rebuilding, right? Whether it's security system, video. And so, I was like, yeah, I could do that because they felt I had a decent presence on camera. They didn't want a trade that was really boring. So one show led to another show, to another show, to another show, to another show. And it was wonderful, which of course led to celebrity. So in my head, Rob, that was the world I saw.
Right.
Was that, you need to be earning these huge incomes and be super popular. That's what success is. Because again, that I didn't have any other definition.
Right.
So that was kind of that business, what that business was. And then coming to this new world of actually success is what just makes you happy, not what makes other people happy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, how come you didn't do tech when how come you're not in tech now? Why are you not doing that, but just doing it at a smaller scale?
So two reasons.
What gave you what made you transform, or was that not your lane, and now this is your lane? This is what you're supposed to be doing? This what feels like you're in flow?
Yeah, you know what? I think I felt like I could have more impact.
Nice.
And help more people avoid my mistakes.
Right.
By teaching, training, and consulting, as opposed to hanging a big TV on the wall. My values changed, right? It wasn't about the fancy equipment anymore.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Sophisticated tech. Right? So that was one reason. But number two, quite frankly, Rob, the business changed, right? You had big players come in like Best Buy, ADT. You just couldn't compete on the levels that they were competing on. But for me, it was more that value that, do I really want to be installing 3 TVs so this guy's kid can play 3 different video games? Like, it didn't resonate. It didn't sit with me well anymore. I just didn't.
Well, it's funny. So I always talk about being in your lane and doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I used to have a home theater consulting company, and I did home theaters and So I'm not a tech guy. I didn't do it, but I could sell, and I had tech. Yeah. And it just got boring to me. It just was boring. It wasn't what I was supposed to do. I mean, I'm a voice actor. So, and I it's interesting when you do what you're supposed to do and you're in your lane and you're in flow, it just feels right. We had this conversation last night with a friend of mine. I was having some incredible ramen, but we were talking about that. When you're in your lane, it just happens. It's just so organic. And when you're doing what you want to do and what you feel you should do, and so now you're doing the coaching, and how's that going? How's your mindset?
Good. Yeah. So, after about 4 or 5 years with the government, I decided, I love the work, Rob, but
right.
We weren't doing the work I wanted to do. So I love the work.
Right.
Because, when you work in government, Rob, it's all stats based. How many bums in seats, how many people in and out. I love the title of your show. We never measured transformation. We never looked at,
really?
Are we actually helping these people, or are we just spending government dollars? And that's fine. That's just how the structure is. They're not bad people, Rob.
No, I understand that. So I just find that interesting.
Yeah,
so I would think that they'd want to follow and see the results.
I wanted to have impact. I wanted to see people, changing their lives for the better.
Yeah.
And so that's why I went into private coaching, because I knew I would have more control over what I was teaching, how I was teaching, and what that transformation was. So that was the big shift for me there too. So that was a third big transformation there.
No, that's good transformation. That's it. Now, do you slip back to your mindset of like arrogance? Have you worked on that? You're still working on yourself, because the self-work, you got to do the work.
That's a great question. And that's when I talk about addiction, is you never really get rid of it. People say it goes away, it doesn't. So yeah, I once in a while, and I'll tell you the correlation, Rob, when I'm insecure, my arrogance comes out. And so I work on those coping mechanisms, understanding, and you get this, right? It's using NLP techniques, understanding, listen, this isn't what I want, and, visioning and all that. So it definitely is not as common. It is a rarity.
Right.
But I can tell you, if somehow something happens, where I'm a little bit more insecure, that arrogance tends to slip out. It's a self-defense mechanism, if anything.
Right. So, my go-to is meditation. That's what I do. If I ever get in a weird, funky mode, I definitely do that. So what are some things that you do and so you said addiction. So you mean addiction to being arrogant, or what was your addiction?
Yeah, arrogance really is an addiction, right? The idea of addiction is that you're overcoming some sort of lack of self-worth or self-isolate. You're hurting inside, and people will turn to things like drugs, alcohol, gambling to overcompensate for that.
Right.
We never look at what are the mental health or mental components we use to overcome that, which is things like arrogance, which is things like pushing people away. So, when you have that in you, it's bred in childhood. It's childhood trauma. The goal here is I'm working to get rid of it. I don't believe, and people have argued with me, and that's fine. I don't believe you ever really get rid of it. Like it's a continuous of evolution of a person.
Okay.
Right. So for the most part, that's what tends to come out.
But I want to dive in that, because you mentioned addiction. Yeah. And I'm just trying to wrap my brain around what you mean by addiction when you say the arrogance was addiction, because most people, when they think addiction, they're thinking substance abuse. So I just want to clarify what exactly you mean by that.
Yeah. So, when we think about addiction, it's really compensating for some kind of lack of self-love, self-worthiness, lack of self-worthiness. That's really where arrogance comes from.
But what were you addicted to? What were you addicted to?
To being arrogant, right? Like to being the person that I didn't want to be. It was that my comfort zone, being comfortable, being aggressive and being angry and being arrogant was my comfort zone. And you get stuck to that. When you're growing out of your comfort zone and you feel uncomfortable, a lot of times, just like any other addiction, you fall back to what you know, because it's soothing, easier, it's less overwhelming, right? So that to me is where I build that correlation.
And so
it's just, to me, is
right. So when you say you're reverting back, so what are some techniques that you use to get out of that space?
So I'm with you. I like meditation, but Rob, I need guided meditation. So I'm a huge fan of simple, small, guided meditations I can put on in an instant. That's number one.
I love it.
Number two, I have worked really hard, Rob, since my divorce over the last 7 years to build a very caring, loving friend network. Absolutely. That I can, when I can't internally draw on something, when I'm depleted internally, that I can get that externally. So I completely rely on contacting those people and working with those people. But
that is so important. No, that is so important. I just want to go reiterate that. That is so important. You know, I've had a few near-death experiences, and the one that I remember the most, I had my blood clot, and I was laying in bed, and I was just thinking of the people that I was going to miss, and I realized how important they are. And I have, I mean, I was pretty good with friends anyways, but I cultivate my inner tribe. I cultivate them, and they mean the world to me. And it's so important to have that. You know, I'd much rather have those people than any material object you could have, period.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work, Rob, and it's an evolution, right? It never stops. You're constantly investing in your tribe as much as they're investing in you. So that's, you know, what I love about it, for sure.
Absolutely. So one of the things you talk about is, was it the one more thing?
Yeah, number 3. I was going to say number 3 is all around health. So for me to get out of that space, you know, you go for a walk or you know, you invest in some kind of self-love that's healthy, right? You hear a lot of people say, yeah, I just had a cigarette and I felt better. And really, you know, what are those things that you love to do that are healthy? For me, it might be watching a really great documentary. So, you know, that to me is an important aspect of pulling out of my rut, for sure. Absolutely.
Well, Bob, I want to really thank you for being here today. If you want to reach out to Bob, it's really easy. You can go to bobminhas.ca because he's in Canada, and let him know that you heard about him on Life Transformation Radio. But Bob, I want to thank you for being here and being so open and really being vulnerable and not being arrogant.
Thank you for having me, Rob. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your support and taking the time out of your very busy and precious day to listen. We so appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me, along with my very special guest, Bob Minhas, to touch your heart, move your soul, and inspire you to live a life of transformation. I'm Rob Actis. Until next time.
This is Life Transformation Radio. Download complete.